Excellent. I think that we are currently live. Senator Booker, thank you for joining us today
Thank you for
with
having
the YMCA family. As always, my friend, it's always good to have a conversation with you and to touch base with you with issues that matter to the community, that matter to New Jersey, but most important, that matters to you and the work you're doing for us in Washington, D.C. So thank you for your time. We have a
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, we have a couple of colleagues here with us today. If you don't mind, I will introduce them, and then we will give you the floor, and you can kind of share with us what's kind of happening in your neck of the woods. I have with me Paul Kieltyka, who is the CEO of the Summit Area YMCA, and he's also the president of the New Jersey YMCA State Alliance. We also have Rose Cushing here with us. She is the CEO of the Metuchen YMCA and also chairs our public policy committee. And I negated to introduce myself. My name is Darrin Anderson. I am with the New Jersey YMCA State Alliance, and I am blessed to serve as the CEO of this organization. So, Senator, once again, thank you for being here with us.
No, thank you. I just want to say a deeper thank you, not just Darrin, Rose, and Paul, but really for everyone who's on this call right now being a part of what is helping to heal our country in the midst of a global pandemic that is assaulting our body politic. This is a group on this call who are dedicated to some of the highest principles and values, not just of our nation, but of humanity. And I know the work you do quite intimately through my experiences working in Newark and eventually around our state, seeing the kind of critical and vital services that you provide. So what's happening right now in Washington is vital to help the vital work that you do. And there are a lot of really important issues that are being debated right now that are critical, as you all know, from your participation in the Paycheck Protection Program to unemployment insurance issues to strengthening just the urgent need to see more charitable giving at a time that budgets are being overburdened. So I'm grateful for the work that you do. We are in the fight right now. And just to give you a little bit of the state of play, there is just a real situation on the Republican side. Usually Democrats sit in negotiation with Republicans. The problem is that Mitch McConnell's Senate Republican caucus is deeply divided over this COVID package. And you have the staunch people that want to do nothing or virtually nothing. And you have some that fearing their own reelection want to do a lot of and get a lot of resources out there. Then you have the White House that also has its own agenda, and it's all created within the Republican proposals, a confusing mishmash of priorities, including things from F-35 fighters in a COVID bill, all the way to an FBI building, things that are appalling to me that they don't put any extra money, say, in for to help with SNAP payments, food stamps, but yet they want to have a full tax write-off for corporate lunches. And so this is going to be a brutal days ahead, but I'm happy to be on this call with you to let you know what my priorities are and frankly, how they line up with what your priorities are, because this is not about which lobbyists can come in and get which tax break for which corporation or what have you. It really is about sustaining our nation through the worst of a crisis that we've seen since a world war, a Great Depression. We are deeply in this. We're not out of the valley of the shadow of death, so to speak. And we have to get the resources to our communities and to leaders like you to help us not only to endure the storm, but to emerge out of it in a way that reflects the fortitude and strength of the American people. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm grateful to be on with you, and let's get to it.
Absolutely. We thank you once again for fighting for the issues that matter. And as you're in DC, you know, the YMCA across the state, we're fighting on behalf of our vulnerable families and those that are in need and our essential workers. And I think you'll be proud what we've been able to do since March. You know, we've been able to provide food and meals up to for 500,000 individuals and families. We've been touching base with almost 12,000 members who are either in shelters or they're house insecure or they're in transition. we've been working with state government to provide emergency child care. We've in fact, since mid-June, reverting back over to our traditional child care. We're impacting about 4,000 children. And so this is what the Y do. This is our mission. Our mission is to fill in the gap and to be desirous to continue to work with those that want to do the same things that we want to do, which is improve our community and make sure that those that do not have can have the essential basics that they need. And with that said, I would like to jump in with my first question, Senator.
By the way, Darrin, thank you.
You know, much of the community rely on the Y for child care services, which is now more important than ever as people, especially working families, including teachers, are returning back to work. Do you expect there to be more funding for child care in the next stimulus package?
So look, this is something that was vital and critical before the COVID crisis. America is an outlier in developed nations in our lack of investment in high quality, affordable childcare, like you all know and provide. And we know it's actually investments in childcare pay massive dividends back in terms of the success and productivity of our children. And the fact that we live in a nation where, on average, most states have their childcare costs are higher than the state college tuition. So I just want you to know that this is a priority for me. It's why I co-sponsored the Child Care is Essential Act, which would provide $50 billion for grants to child care providers like yours during this pandemic. Now, again, the shocking thing is that Republicans haven't shown this priority. They've only allocated $15 million nationally for child care. And that, to me, is stunning when the FBI building they're proposing alone that's in this bill is well over $1 billion. $1 billion for a new FBI building that has nothing to do with the crisis, yet only $15 million for childcare. And so we have to get to our country the moral urgency of a nation that prioritizes its children and recognizes that our children are our greatest natural resource in a global knowledge-based society. It's why I even beyond this COVID bill, I believe we should have universal child care, and I sponsored a bill called Universal Child Care and Early Learning Act, because this is a priority. It is an urgency. And so I feel what you're saying about the fact that it is very hard to get our economy back going, especially at a time that we may not have all of our schools open, where parents find themselves in an utter crisis. How do you go back to work without your children being taken care of? And even if you do stay home, those unemployment checks, as we know, the Republicans want to tear them down by about $400 a week. So for reopening businesses, schools, this is a critical issue that touches so much of our life. And look, New Jersey's child care subsidy program helps income eligible parents, pay for child care, and was expanded by our state to support New Jersey families and providers. That's been needed, but it is so important that the federal government does something, and this is a part of the ongoing fight that we have right now. I wish I could tell you which way it's going to go, but it's so low on the Republicans' priority list. $15 million across 50 states is not a material difference to in relation to the needs that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for addressing children. They're a vital part of what we do. My second question is, many larger Ys and other nonprofits really have not had access to the relief because they have more than 500 employees. So what has been done to address this issue? And do you think possibly there'll be something in the next stimulus plan?
Yeah, so this is, I mentioned a little bit in my introduction about the faults within the PPP program. And so we know across America, every aspect of human life, from drug treatment all the way to child care, from elder care all the way to giving people access to needed medical checkups. Nonprofits play that essential role in our society. And so we fought so hard to include nonprofits in the original Paycheck Protection Plan in the CARES Act. But I know that some Ys in New Jersey and around the country have combined staff and resources in a way that they actually did not qualify. Because if you look at all your seasonal staff and others, you have more than 500 employees, and therefore you were not included in that CARES Act. And so this is why we've been fighting to correct for that. And it's critical that these forgivable loans, that mid-sized nonprofits are included. And so this is something I've been talking about now, I guess, for months, which is just urging Senate leadership to expand eligibility for nonprofits in the next package so they can participate in the PPP and the Paycheck Protection Program. And they could do that either by just modifying the 500 employee cap or by other means, and also could provide guidance to lenders to actually begin to prioritize processing the applications of charitable nonprofits. So this has been my constant drumbeat mantra. And now here we are in a massive debate down here in Washington playing out over these next few days. And so here's the lay of the land. The HEROES Act, which came out of the House of Representatives, if you remember, PPP under that would be expanded to nonprofits of all sizes, including those who employ over 500 people. That would be success. But unfortunately, again, under the Republican plan proposed this week, PPP would not be expanded to mid-size and larger organizations. And so this is absolutely unacceptable. And that's another fault line in this bill. And another thing that I'm going to be doing everything I can to champion, because we need to make sure that nonprofits are fully supported as they respond to the COVID crisis, because your expenses are going up and your demands are going up as well. And that's not sustainable. We have to get you support. And this is one critical way we can do it. And I'll be standing with the Democrats who passed the House bill to make sure that we do everything we can to get it into the Senate version.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. From one Jersey guy to another, thank you for everything you're doing, not just for WISE, but for all the residents in New Jersey. You just kind of mentioned it. The last 4 months have been, quite frankly, very difficult for 31 plus Y associations across the state. Most of us have laid off 70 to 90% of our employees. Like you said, we're facing insurmountable expenses with a revenue trail that basically nothing. And it's incredibly difficult. And first and foremost, before I ask my question, please understand these people are still our family, and we want to take care of them, and we want to make sure that they get their unemployment benefits and whatever we can do to help them to hopefully someday soon we can bring them back. But in the meantime, from the WISE point of view, we have the unemployment insurance. And this is catastrophic. We were not meant to be laying off hundreds and thousands of people. Most of us are facing quarterly bills that are 10 times the amount of what we paid for the entire year last year. Now, I understand, and I thank you for all your colleagues in Congress are working towards a 50% credit for the unemployment insurance, but and the reimbursement. Yeah, exactly. What about 100%?
So look, I back in May, because of New Jersey nonprofits like yourself that are self-funded nonprofits, I began asking leadership on both sides of the aisle to treat those nonprofits fairly, and that federal and really just insisting, or else, as you said, you use the right word, catastrophic costs. Federal unemployment insurance, I said very clearly, needs to be reimbursed at 100%. That's got to be the goal, frankly, the floor, or else we're going to see a lot of nonprofits just not be able to function. And so I was encouraged to see that Republicans took my letter to heart and introduced a proposal this week that would increase reimbursement from 50 to 75%. But again, 75% is not enough, as you all know from your experiences. That is still meaning massive increases to your regular monthly costs. And so in these coming days, this has got to be there. And many of you all know this, because all across our state of New Jersey, every single county, there are families that really rely and are in need of the services that the Y supports. I live in Newark, New Jersey's Central Ward, and in a section where people work hard, and we don't mistake wealth with worth in my community. But God, folks working full-time jobs, catching extra shifts, and still need support. And this kind of support that the Y provides. And for the Y now to be put at a point where they have to lay off tons of staff and close their doors or limit their services, this is again, you used the right word. It could be catastrophic in terms of families being able to make it. So this is something that's on my agenda and that we're driving. And as you can see, there's a lot of things that the Democrats are trying to push into a bill at a time that we're just not getting the kind of support from Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump we'd like to see. Now, the fact that their caucus is so split gives us a bit more leverage in a negotiation, because anything that passes, it means Mitch McConnell, who's not going to get many of his members of his caucus on board with anything he does, is going to have to lean on us to get something done. So this is something that hurts me deeply to know what you all are struggling with. And it drives me every day down here to keep reminding the people that are actually in that small group of people at the table negotiating that this is kept in the center of their thoughts.
Well, thank you, Samuel. Keep fighting for that 100%. And if I may, I'm going to follow up with another question. You mentioned this in your opening. What is your position as well as where you think the status of above the line universal charitable deduction is going?
Yeah, so I was like you all. I was an executive during a horrible recession. This is worse, but I was leading the city of Newark when we had the massive recession, the Great Recession in our country, and unemployment rates in Newark were between 20 and 30%, and so many of my members of my community had to rely on nonprofits at a time that people were hurting all over. And what I realized then was, if we didn't do things to further incentivize charitable contributions at the very time that we need more charitable contributions, because of the economy, we would see less charitable contributions coming in. And so that was the Great Recession of 8, 9, 10. This is a greater recession. And we are not, as I said earlier, we are, I don't even know if we're halfway through the valley of the shadow of death of this pandemic and the resultant economic damage. And so we have got to get a strengthening of charitable giving incentives in this next relief package. That changing of the tax law or whatever incentives we could provide could be the difference between, in New Jersey, tens of thousands of families getting the resources that they need, whether it's from food banks look, you can imagine the nonprofits I've been talking with and working with, from domestic violence shelters. I could go through them that are really struggling right now, who provide critical services like the Y. So look, the CARES Act included a temporary above the line universal charitable deduction, but this has to go further in order to encourage the donations that folks need. And so, a lot of my colleagues are on board with me on this, that we really want to advance this idea of above the line deductions in the CARES Act. We want to increase the $300 per person cap and extend the effective date of the incentive. It would allow lots of folks to claim charitable donations as above the line and itemized deductions in their 2019 tax filing and going forward. So into 2020. So these are the kind of things that make a material difference. I know this from myself and my charitable giving. It would make a big difference. So I stand with you guys in lockstep on this urgency. And I feel like this has now been the pattern for every question and concern you have. This is really going to be one of the more consequential negotiations for the state of New Jersey, for the well-being of American families in a long time. And I am doing everything I can, using every form of persuasion possible that I can to try to leverage goodness and decency and mercy into this bill, that the Republican bill right now with F-35s, FBI buildings, corporate tax breaks, it just doesn't seem to embody the common values of all Americans, no matter what their political persuasion. They really do believe fundamentally that this is the moment we should be helping our neighbor, loving our neighbor, standing up for others who are in difficult straits. That's the American spirit, and a national bill should reflect that. And the wealthiest nation on the planet Earth should not have what we see right now, which are just rising levels of child poverty, of economic distress. It's just unacceptable to see America be an outlier, not just in the number of cases we have and deaths we have, but in the highest child poverty rates in the industrial world. That's not who we are, and we need to stand up for our values, our principles, and really in the name of love.
Yeah, well, thank you. And Senator, and once again, we want to applaud you for putting up the good fight down in Washington, D.C. and allowing nonprofits like the YMCA to continue to provide essential services and meet the emerging needs of the community. So any relief that can be garnered down in Washington, D.C. to help nonprofits, just economically across the state for our Ys. I mean, collectively, we've been hemorrhaging. We've lost about 90 million. Once Paul has also mentioned that we had to lay off between 75 to 90% of our staff. But despite all of this, we continue to have a commitment to the community and continue to make sure that our families are getting food and that we're reaching out to those that may be in inclusion or socially isolated, or those that may have been a part of our chronic disease programs. So these things are vitally important to us, and we thank you for allowing us and to continue to support us during this difficult time. And I know that you have a tight schedule. I know you're doing what we've asked you to do in New Jersey, but I would like to ask one question, get a little bit of your departing wisdom before you move on. The YMCA's, we have been having a very robust conversation regarding social equity, race, systemic racism, institutional racism. And we feel as an organization that's about healthy living, youth development, and social responsibility, that we have a responsibility of creating a space so community can have these conversations. And so we can sit across from someone that may not have my same experience or may not have the same values and beliefs that we have. So we're asking you, Senator, as the YMCA continues to have these conversations, is there anything that you can share to continue to encourage us to kind of be a bright spot in our communities?
Well, first of all, I just want to encourage you in two ways. The first way is, look, tomorrow, at the crack of dawn, I'll get on a plane with Nancy Pelosi and a handful of others that the Lewis family invited to go to the final funeral for John Lewis. And, this is a guy who was such an important figure in my life on a number of levels. One is his March on the Edmund Pettus Bridge inspired a New Jersey lawyer to get involved in representing Black families that were being turned away from housing in New Jersey suburbs. And then I get to the Senate, and my father died a few days before I got the blessing of New Jersey electing me. So, it was this hurt and pain missing my dad, and my mom was grieving as well. And we were taken to see John Lewis as the last thing I did before I was sworn in as New Jersey senator. And it was one of these powerful moments. This man had such grace and humility and talked to me about what it meant to him to see me about to be sworn in as the fourth Black person in our country's history to ever be popularly elected to the United States Senate. And from that moment on, we developed this friendship and this relationship. And what I recognized for him, especially on this long trip he and I took to go to Bible study, we drove from Atlanta to Plains, Georgia, to do Bible study with Jimmy Carter. And as he just went through the numbers of times he was beaten and bloodied and broken from freedom rides where they were pulled out and mercilessly beaten, to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which we have film and video of. But what was amazing to me is that he kept getting up, and he never stopped the march for goodness and decency and mercy, and for that ideal of radical love. And I say that just because I know the why. I know the spirit of the leaders and servants that are a part of this organization. And right now, not literally, but you all are taking blows to your organization. You're losing employees. You're going through a misery heaped upon you by savage circumstances that have only been compounded and made worse by the tragic mistakes of leaders at the highest positions of our land. And I just want to encourage you, like John Lewis, to do what you already are doing. And I know you have this spirit, this invincible will, this indomitable love, that you will keep doing whatever you can. Knock me down, you get up. Take away my dollars, I'm going to make the cents go farther than they were before. And when it comes to the pervasiveness of systemic racism that we see from in every aspect of American life, there are disparate racial outcomes in our criminal justice system, where we now lock up more. In fact, there are more blacks under criminal supervision now than all the slaves since 1850. We see this in disparate treatment, even in the PPP program. They did a study now where they sent the same people going in for these PPP loans with the same resume and background. They just had the applicant walk in, black person with the same papers as a white person, and they found out that the white person was being offered more products, being more encouraged. It was a stark difference between the treatment of blacks, the treatment of the white applicants. And so for you all to have these conversations, which are not always comfortable, which force us to confront difficulties, to self-examine, could often put us into states of cognitive dissonance, because we all know we're people of goodwill. But as I learned when I was mayor of the city of Newark, we weren't doing everything we should have been doing to confront these equities, and had to work really hard at it. This is really important. Remember, the final thing I would say to you is that King and Lewis, they would never focus their energy simply on the bigots and white supremacists. King even explicitly said in the letters from Birmingham jail, he's less concerned with the KKK and White Citizens Council than he is with good people who do not do what they should do. As King said so eloquently, what we have to repent for is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. And so please, as good people, we must continue to speak up on these things, to force ourselves out of positions of comfort into the discomfort that is always necessary for change on a personal level, organizational level, or even a national level. Change is not easy, but we must be soldiers willing to bring about that change. And thank you for that spirit.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, as always, and thanks for those words of inspiration and giving us the impetus. Despite the devastation that's happening around us and unprecedented times, we're going to continue to fight the good fight. And as you're doing it in Washington, D.C., we're going to continue to do it here in New Jersey and do our best to meet the emerging needs and the essential needs of our community, of our residents, and those that's just simply in need of our services. So thank you for today, and we thank you for your time.
No, thank you. I'll be home on Sunday for a day of rest and prayer. Phone call. So I'm just praying that our country in this time, in this negotiation, that will have such a serious impact on your organizations. I'm just praying for our success. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.